The year is 1586. In York, England, a woman stands trial for treason. Margaret Cleo, her name nearly erased from history, is accused of harboring Catholic priests. That's it. No spies, no assassins, no conspiracies. Just one act of faith in Protestant England under Queen Elizabeth, and it carries a death sentence. But Margaret does something that shocks everyone in the courtroom. She refuses to enter a plea. Not guilty. Not guilty. Nothing. Complete silence. And under English law, if you refuse to plead, there is no trial. No witnesses, no forced testimony, not even from her own children. She had found a loophole to protect her family. The courts had a loophole too. Peine forte et dure, punishment hard and severe. If you refused to plead, the law allowed them to press you under stones until you either entered a plea or died. Most people lasted 15 to 20 minutes. Ribs would crack, lungs puncture, life extinguished. Quick by medieval standards, relatively merciful. Margaret's execution was supposed to follow the same script. But then new orders came from London. Written instructions, precise and horrifying. Exact stone weights, timed intervals, medical supervision. Someone wanted her conscious, aware, enduring every second of agony. Longer than anyone had ever survived under the law. The executioners prepared the usual equipment. Wooden boards, smooth river stones, leather straps. But instead of stacking everything at once, they started gently, 50 pounds across her chest. Barely enough to restrict breathing. 15 minutes later, 75 pounds. 15 more minutes, 100. And a physician stood beside her the entire time, not to help but to monitor her pulse, to calculate the maximum weight her body could endure without immediate death. Imagine lying there. Stones pressed down. Your ribs flex, your chest constricts, blood pools in your mouth. Your vision narrows. You're on the edge of unconsciousness, but you cannot pass out. Every ounce, every second is measured. Every minute is agony, because they want you awake. Hour 1. Margaret screams. The crowd outside the toll booth listens. This is public. This is warning. Hour 3. Ribs crack audibly, snapping like green wood. Hour 6. Her screams fade, but consciousness remains. She prays aloud in Latin. Hour 12. The physician checks her pulse again. Still strong. Another 100 pounds added. This isn't punishment. This is precision. This is horror engineered to the second. And it's only the beginning. The execution wasn't just punishment. It was a meticulously designed experiment in human endurance. How long could a human body survive being crushed? How much pain could consciousness withstand before it finally broke? By hour 24, the crowd outside begins to murmur. Whispers turn into questions. Why is this taking so long? Who ordered this? This isn't justice, it's torture. Keep that detail in mind. Those murmurs will become pivotal. And here's the part that makes this nightmare even darker. The executioners weren't improvising. They were following specific orders, written in black and white, directly from the Queen of England herself, Elizabeth I. In the British National Archives, a letter dated March 1586 lays it all out. The printed text orders Margaret's execution. Standard procedure. But the handwritten margin notes, Elizabeth's own hand, are terrifying. 3 days duration. Public witness essential. Maintain consciousness throughout. Elizabeth didn't just approve this execution. She designed it. She specified every detail, demanded Margaret remain awake, fully aware, for 3 full days. Every agonizing second had to be witnessed. Every cry, every gasp, every fracture of bone a message to the people. Defy the crown, and this is your fate. But why Margaret? She wasn't a spy or assassin. She was a middle-class butcher's wife, respected in York, running a successful business and raising 8 children. She hid Catholic priests, a seemingly simple act that in Protestant England was treason. Elizabeth wanted to terrify ordinary citizens. If a respected mother could be pressed to death under public scrutiny, imagine what awaited anyone else. But Margaret's courage and faith would turn Elizabeth's plan on its head. Hour 36, still conscious. Still singing hymns in Latin, over and over, verses of salvation and resurrection. The crowd, initially horrified, begins to shift. Protestant bystanders, Elizabeth's own subjects, start to join her, singing along with her prayers. The executioners panic. This was not supposed to inspire sympathy or admiration. Hour 48, Margaret's lungs weaken. Her chest is beginning to collapse under the 700 pounds of stone. The physician monitoring her pulse notes she is still alive. Orders are clear, 3 days minimum. The weight increases, meticulously calibrated, inch by inch to ensure she remains alive, conscious, and aware. And in those final hours as her body fails her, Margaret does something extraordinary. She calls out the names of her executioners. I forgive you, John Fawcett. I forgive you, Thomas Ward. This is not your sin. It is the sin of those who commanded you. Imagine being one of those men. You've just spent 3 days slowly crushing a woman to death. And she forgives you, placing the moral responsibility not on the executioners, but on those who orchestrated this atrocity. Hour 72. March 25, 1586. 3:47 p.m. Margaret Cleo breathes her last. The law, the church, the crown, all thought they had broken her. Instead, she left a legacy that would challenge authority for generations. The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't gasp. They don't even move. Silence, heavy, stunned, suffocating. And then, from somewhere in the back, a single pair of hands begins to clap. Slow, deliberate, defiant. Another person joins in. Then another. Within seconds, hundreds are on their feet, offering a standing ovation. For a woman the crown labeled a traitor. The executioners panic and rush to disperse the crowd, but it's far too late. Something fundamental has shifted in York. Elizabeth wanted to manufacture fear. Instead, she created a martyr. Within 48 hours, the consequences begin. York erupts into chaos. Protestant citizens are demanding answers. Why 3 days? Who ordered that? That wasn't justice, that was murder. The city council tries desperately to silence the story. But news spreads anyway. Remember, the 1500s had their own kind of viral media. It just moved on paper instead of screens. Pamphlets circulate. Eyewitness accounts multiply. And with every retelling, Margaret becomes more heroic. And Elizabeth becomes more monstrous. Then come the documented aftershocks, massive ones. Within 2 weeks, 300 Protestants in York convert to Catholicism, openly citing Margaret's execution as their reason. The punishment meant to frighten people away from Catholicism ends up pulling them toward it. Within 6 months, Elizabeth's advisors are spiraling. Her carefully crafted deterrent has become a propaganda catastrophe. Catholic nations point to the execution as proof of English brutality. Even Protestant allies grow uneasy. Within 3 years, Parliament is forced to act. In 1589, the first legal restrictions on execution duration appear in English law. Swift dispatch required. Prolonged suffering under guise of lawful punishment forbidden. This statute, written because of Margaret Cleo, becomes the backbone for humane execution reforms across Europe. France cites it during its 1790s reforms. And it influences the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution, the clause banning cruel and unusual punishment. One woman. 72 hours. And she changed the moral architecture of Western law. But the legacy doesn't end there. In 1970, nearly 4 centuries later, the Catholic Church canonizes Margaret Cleo as a saint. Today, the place where she died in York is a pilgrimage site visited by thousands. And Queen Elizabeth's execution order remains preserved in the British archives, an official symbol of state cruelty gone too far. Even in 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court referenced Margaret's case while evaluating modern execution protocols. Her suffering continues to shape discussions about human dignity, consciousness, and the moral limits of state power. Elizabeth wanted to showcase absolute authority. What she revealed instead was that some forces surpass even monarchs. Human dignity. Defiance in the face of injustice. The unbreakable will of a single person who refuses to surrender their spirit. The executioners thought they were crushing a woman. Instead, they crushed an entire era of legalized brutality. So now let me ask you something. Could you remain conscious and defiant for 72 hours? Could you keep singing while your ribs shattered? Could you forgive the people destroying your body? Most of us like to believe we could. But Margaret wasn't born a hero. She was a butcher's wife who made a choice to protect her faith and her family. And when that choice led her to unimaginable suffering, she made one more. Not to let them break her spirit. That's the real lesson. Courage isn't about feeling fearless. It's about refusing to let fear choose your path. But don't scroll yet, because here's the modern connection that makes her story matter right now. In 2024, we still debate execution protocols. How much suffering is acceptable? How conscious can a person remain before it becomes torture? Where is the ethical line? And in those debates, courtrooms, legal briefs, constitutional arguments, Margaret Cleo's 72 hours still appear. One woman. 3 days. 4 centuries of legal reform. And if this story moved you the way it moved me, hit that subscribe button. Next week, we're diving even deeper into history's darkest punishments. 3 execution methods that lasted even longer than Margaret's. One of them went on for 17 days, and involved the victim performing surgery on themselves. You won't want to miss it. This has been the story of Margaret Cleo, the woman who turned her own execution into a revolution. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.